We recently got in a pretty interesting Fender guitar that is a little different than a lot of other Fenders. It has a lot of similarities with a very popular guitar from another brand, so let's check it out. This is a Fender Troublemaker Telecaster. At the first glance, this is actually not that different from a Fender Telecaster Deluxe, which is a model I personally really enjoy. But this does have some differences. As you can probably tell, this is extremely close to a Les Paul in certain ways. This was basically Fender's attempt at doing Les Paul specs, but on a Fender. This is the made in Japan version of the Troublemaker Tele. There's been a few different iterations. Fender USA has done the Parallel Universe Troublemaker Telecaster, and Squier has done a Paranormal Series Telecaster, but we're gonna be looking at the Japanese version, which I think is the rarest of all three, probably by a good bit. These are made pretty much exclusively for the Japanese market, and they do have slightly different specs than the other versions. As you can see here, we get regular humbuckers instead of the wide range that you'll see on like a Telecaster Deluxe. I would say the biggest similarity to a Les Paul is actually the bridge setup. You get the Tune-o-matic bridge and tailpiece, which I think is really cool. I really like the setup, and it's something that you almost never see on Fender guitars. Usually you would just see pretty typical hardtail here, but it's a little different on this one. Now the body and neck are mahogany here, which is in line with what you'd usually see on a Gibson Les Paul, but not in line with what you would typically see on most Fenders. But scale length wise, this is actually Fender scale length. This is 25.5. I don't know why they didn't do 24.75 like a Gibson if they wanted to be in Gibson territory. And on the Japanese version here, the radius is 9.5 inches, which is consistent with most more modern Fender Telecasters. The US version did have a 12-inch radius, which is closer to a Les Paul. You do get the single binding here. This is not double bound like a Telecaster, but just single binding like you would see on a Les Paul standard. Checking out the back here, you can see some nice grain out of the mahogany on both the neck and body. Now the neck here has a satin finish, very smooth, I like it, but definitely not kind of what you'd expect for like a Les Paul style guitar. Super cool guitar overall. I would say definitely in Telecaster Deluxe territory, but also in Les Paul territory in its own right. Since this is in Les Paul territory, we are going to try to dial up some Les Paul type sounds with this, and then we are going to bring in an actual Gibson Les Paul and do a quick comparison. So let's plug it in and see what it sounds like. So plugging this one in, I would say sound-wise, we're way more in Les Paul territory than we are in typical Fender territory. Even factoring in like Telecaster Deluxes. Can definitely see they're going for like a PAF style pickup here. And I think that this actually really delivers on it. Sounds good, feels kind of a little more on the modern side of like a PAF, kind of compressed than a typical PAF. Felt very like controlled, like everything felt tight. But yeah, really cool. I like how this one sounds. I like how much it gives back to you when you dig in. This version with this scale length with the 9.5 radius feels like a Tele, maybe sounds kind of like a Les Paul, but I do feel like I'm playing a Telecaster when I play this guitar. So let's compare this to a Les Paul. This is the Les Paul that you were just listening to. It is a 2024 Les Paul Standard 60s in Unburst. Really nice flame top here. I really like this one. Both very solid guitars. Both have some similarities and both have quite a bit of differences. I would say feel-wise, as soon as I picked this up, they felt completely different. It wasn't like this Tele felt like a Gibson. This definitely felt like transitioning over from a Telecaster to a Les Paul. But sound-wise, I was actually really surprised how close they sounded. I think the Gibson maybe was a little more wide open. It felt a little bit hotter. I was definitely getting a little bit more feedback with the Les Paul. Both cool. Like I said, I was just kind of surprised how much in the same ballpark they were. If I had to point to like one thing, I'd say the Telecaster was a little bit more compressed, a little bit more controlled, and then this was a little more wide open and just a little bit hotter. In the room, I would say these two actually sounded a lot more different than they sound under microphones. Listening back to audio, they definitely both have their own characteristics. It's always hard to judge because when you're playing a guitar, there's like a lot there that you're just never gonna get listening back to it. I'd say playing it, they didn't feel or sound as similar, but listening back, you definitely do get similar results with both. This is gonna call back to a video we did a long time ago, but the Telecaster reminds me almost more of like the newer Tokai guitars as far as sound-wise, where it definitely sounds like a Les Paul, it's definitely PAF territory, but it's maybe a little bit more modern sounding than something like this. Back to the Tele. Fender, of course, calls this the Troublemaker Tele, and that is a nod to the fact that they're being troublemakers, making a guitar that's, in theory, quite close to a Les Paul. Do I think this accomplishes that? I don't know what Fender's exact goal was when they put this guitar out. I think they were just trying to do something that was a little bit different, a little bit funny, kind of a nod to, obviously, their biggest competitor. I think they succeeded at doing something Les Paul inspired. I don't think this is a Les Paul replacement. I think this definitely feels way more in Fender territory, especially this version with this neck and everything. But if you're somebody that's a die-hard Fender player, you don't get along with the little bit shorter scale length on Gibson guitars, and you like Fender neck profiles better, but you want like a Les Paul sound, I mean, this 1,000,000% delivers. I was very surprised listening back to the audio at how much this really did get into Les Paul territory. You could even take it further. You could put Gibson pickups in this. No one will stop you, and you'd be even closer. In that sense, I think this is really great. Feel-wise, I will say totally different. I don't think their goal was to make this play like a Les Paul, because if it was, they didn't get very close. For those into both Les Pauls and Teles, neck profile-wise, this is a little bit thicker than like the 60s reissue Les Paul we just looked at. I would not say it's like as thick as like a 58 Les Paul. It's kind of in like that 59 sweet spot territory, which is probably what they were going for. Definitely not the thinnest neck, but certainly not the thickest either. Overall, I'd say most aspects of this guitar fall into a nice sweet spot. So if you are familiar with Fender and that sort of thing, you will probably feel right at home with this. Now, if you are a Gibson player and you're looking at this going, that's where I'm gonna get into Fender because I don't have a Fender. To be honest, I wouldn't really recommend this. It doesn't feel any more like a Gibson than any other typical Fender does, and it'll give you such a close sound to your Gibson Les Paul, for example. Maybe just stick with that, and if you're gonna try Fender, try something a little bit more traditional that'll give you a different sound. I think this is a really fun guitar, and I do really like it, but I think if you already have a Les Paul, this is not exactly gonna be breaking any new ground sound-wise. And in the same way, if you maybe only have like a 50s style traditional Telecaster, well, getting this completely check the Gibson box, I don't know, it's kind of up to you. Depends if you prioritize how something plays versus how it sounds and where you kind of land with all that. That's gonna have to be at your own discretion. Over the years, you can see many different times where Fender has done a guitar that is certainly inspired by things that Gibson has done. But when doing research for this video, I realized there's actually not as many guitars that Gibson has made that feel very inspired by Fender. I really couldn't point to any particular Gibson that I think is like totally in Fender territory in the way that this is in Gibson territory. Let us know down below in the comments if you have any ideas of Gibsons that kind of check the Fender box, and we'll try to check them out, and maybe we'll do a video comparing if Gibson did a better job making a Fender style guitar or if Fender did a better job making a Gibson style guitar. Thank you guys as always for hanging out with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we will see you in another video soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, we have a whole lot more, and you can click right here to watch another.